So if you've been around my channel for a while, you'll notice something, and that is that I hardly ever have Orochimaru in a versus battle video, like ever. The reason is because for the most part, Orochimaru is a weird character to power scale. Not so much in the inconsistency, but rather it almost seems like he can never die. And he can still be defeated in the cases of Sasuke and Itachi, but somehow he's still able to crawl out of the woodwork. But today I want to challenge myself and do this video on Orochimaru, but not just him. I got him paired up with his best buddy, Kabuto. Specifically, Kabuto pre-Sage mode, as in the beginning of Shippuden Kabuto, and pitting them both up against each Akatsuki duo to see how they stack up. Mainly because I do think this pair is actually pretty tough. I mean, they were both giving all of Jiraiya, Tsunade, Shizune, and Naruto a good amount of trouble during the three-way deadlock fight. Now, I know that the participants, specifically the Sannin, were all nerfed in their own respective way, but still the point stands that Orochimaru and Kabuto are tough. Orochimaru with his arms was able to press and beat old man Hidan, and Kabuto is stated by two Sannin to be on the same level as Kakashi, and probably stayed that way up until mid-Shippuden, so yeah, these guys are no joke. That said, of course, neither are the Akatsuki duo. I mean, they're out here taking down Biju for crying out loud. So today, I wanted to see how well they do against each duo of the Akatsuki. So the versions of Kabuto and Orochimaru I'm going to use are as followed. The Kabuto from the Tenchi Bridge arc and the Orochimaru that fought Hiruzen with his arms, because I feel like this is the most reasonable versions of these characters to use in this video. Maybe I could switch it out with the War arc Orochimaru, but I feel like if I did that, then he'd be able to use the reanimation jutsu a whole lot better than he did in the Konan Crush arc and revive way more people with said jutsu. At least with this Orochimaru, we'd only give him Tobirama and Hashirama at about 10% of their strength. This also may or may not go without saying, but I think it's safe to say that Orochimaru has a good amount of knowledge on most, if not all, the Akatsuki members. If you take the OVA scenes as canon, he mentions to Sasori that he researched Sasori thoroughly even before joining the Akatsuki. He also knew about Hidan and Kakuzu being, quote, immortal, and during the fight with Sasuke and Itachi, Orochimaru didn't seem too surprised with Itachi having a Susanoo, but rather that he had the Totsuka blade. So that does imply he doesn't know everything about each member, such as probably all the abilities of Pain's Rinnegan, but I feel like a decent surface level knowledge is fair game, which means by extension, Kabuto would also have the same intel. So we'll get the somewhat easier entry out of the way, which is Itachi and Kisame. This one might be self-explanatory since we've already seen Itachi one-shot Orochimaru with Genjutsu, and even with Kabuto, I don't think it'll make much difference, especially if Itachi has Kisame there. The only reason I said somewhat easier is because at the time Itachi beat Orochimaru, it's unknown if he already had the reanimation jutsu or not. If we assume not, then he might have an easier time against Itachi with the added pressure that Hashirama and Tobirama would be able to apply. If we use the Tobirama that we saw, we couldn't theoretically give him Flying Raijin since we didn't see him use it in the fight with Hiruzen, and I can't really see this Tobirama at 10% of his power being able to match or beat Kisame in water style. And to be honest, I could see Kisame making a few water clones and then being able to deal with a nerfed Edo Tobirama. Though I am willing to admit Tobirama's infinite darkness could be a problem, but if Kisame already has clones summoned, they might be able to distract long enough for Itachi to possibly fire an Amaterasu at Tobirama to at least disrupt the jutsu. I mean, if Hiruzen with no visual jutsu could locate Hashirama and Tobirama in the darkness, then I feel like Itachi could do the same, even with the infinite darkness jutsu possibly hindering Itachi's Sharingan. So that would leave Kisame to deal with Hashirama and Itachi to deal with Orochimaru and Kabuto, which would probably go about as you expect. I mean, Orochimaru, even after learning the reanimation jutsu, still blatantly said that Itachi was stronger than him, and it'd be totally likely that Itachi puts Orochimaru in Genjutsu the same way he did before and deals with Kabuto accordingly. Now, of course, you could say that since their first encounter, Orochimaru would do a better job avoiding Genjutsu from Itachi, and with Kabuto there, he might be able to break him out of it. But if that's the case, then Itachi can just go into his Susanoo if he felt pressure to do so and end the fight. And we know that not even Orochimaru's 8-headed serpent was strong enough to beat a near-death Itachi in his Susanoo, so I don't see Orochimaru or Kabuto doing much damage. Even if they summon some snakes and Manda to help, it just leaves a larger target for Itachi to fire an Amaterasu or stab with a Totsuka blade. And I feel as though a full power Kisame could at the very least hold off against a 10% Hashirama that doesn't have Sage mode or the majority of his strength. At the very least, He can last long enough for enough time for Itachi to deal with Orochimaru and Kabuto for him to help. And to be frank, this is all assuming that Orochimaru can get the reanimation jutsu off in time in the first place, since it's possible Itachi knows Orochimaru has the reanimation jutsu. Again, if you take this as canon, the Itachi filler arc kind of covers this, where Itachi hears the gist of the jutsu and immediately says, yeah, that's Tobirama's jutsu, and explains how it works and how to stop it. With his Sharingan, Itachi might be quick enough to stop Orochimaru from summoning Hashirama and Tobirama in the first place. Which, if that's the case, it would be even worse for the sound duo. So yeah, I'd say Itachi and Kisame take this mid-diff, high-diff with Edo Tensei. Up next, we have Deidera and Sasori. This one's kind of tricky because neither Deidera and arguably Sasori can use a bit of their arsenal without putting the other member at risk. For example, Deidera can't use C3 or C4 without possibly killing Sasori, and depending on where Deidera is, Sasori can't use his poison. Though this may be irrelevant since there's a decent chance Orochimaru has immunity to Sasori's poison, and by extension, Kabuto would too. Another thing to note is that, like I said earlier, Orochimaru has a decent amount of intel on Sasori and possibly Deidera as well. Not to sound redundant, but if you take the scenes of the Itachi filler arc as canon, Orochimaru knows about Sasori's third Kazekage puppet, and possibly that Sasori's real body is a puppet as well. And in that same scene, he remarks that he knows a bit about Deidera and his general abilities as well. If Orochimaru is able to use Edo Tensei in time, Hashirama and Tobirama together could possibly handle Deidera. Worst case, Kabuto might need to help them out with Deidera, and again, not being able to use much of his more deadly explosives, he could only rely on C1 and C2 variances. And with Tobirama and Hashirama having long-range jutsu in their arsenal, and Kabuto possibly helping out by providing support on how to attack Deidera, I don't know if I could see Deidera winning in that scenario, even with his flight capabilities. This would leave Orochimaru to fight Sasori. If Sasori uses the third Kazekage, I don't know how Orochimaru would respond. If he's quick enough to dodge the Iron Sand attack, then he doesn't really have much to worry about. And with how slippery Orochimaru can be, I feel like it's likely. Especially if Sakura, with minimal help from Chiyo, could do the same thing. Speaking of Sakura, I feel like if a basic punch from her can finish out the third Kazekage, then a full power wind style attack from Orochimaru should be able to do something similar. I mean, Orochimaru straight knocked back a four-tailed Naruto with a basic punch of his own. Speaking of wind style, I feel like that combined with the fact that he knows every other nature affinity along with his unorthodox taijutsu, honestly, he could probably deal with the 100 puppets if Sasori chooses to bring them out. Even more so since Sakura and Chiyo could do a decent job against them, even if it was with 10 extra puppets that Chiyo had. If it all goes down like that, then it just leaves Sasori himself, and if his poison can't work against Orochimaru, then I feel like Orochimaru has this in the bag. Though I am fully willing to admit that Sasori's poison might be a special case because, Sakura literally had to invent an antidote from scratch to deal with Sasori's poison when it affected Kankuro. So if it can work, then, worst case, Orochimaru drops dead in about 3 days later. Again, Orochimaru, without the use of ninjutsu, was doing pretty well against a four-tailed Naruto, and assuming Orochimaru still has a decent bit of chakra left after dealing with all of Sasori's puppets, then Orochimaru should be fine. That's really not even mentioning the fact that Orochimaru can still summon Manda to deal with Sasori if he really felt like he needed to. And to add more to the point, if any of the other teammates are able to take care of their respective opponents in enough time to help the other, then it'll be even easier for the sound team's favor. Now, admittedly, if Deidera didn't care about Sasori and chose to use C3 or C4, then by all means Deidera and, quote, Sasori win. But if we restrict them in the ways that I mentioned before, then Orochimaru and Kabuto win this about mid to high diff. Now we go on to Hidan and Kakuzu. Now, I know Hidan has a bit of a reputation of getting clowned on a lot in these versus battle videos. For this one, honestly though, I could see him being a little bit more useful. That is, if Orochimaru and Kabuto have no knowledge of how Hidan's ritual specifically works. I know I said earlier that Orochimaru knows that Hidan and Kakuzu are the immortal duo, but that doesn't straight indicate that he knows exactly how their immortality works. If we assume they do, however, then it does make things a little tougher for the immortal duo. The best way for Kabuto and Orochimaru to take this fight, in my opinion, is for Orochimaru to fight Kakuzu and Kabuto to fight Hidan. I feel like at the very least, Kabuto would perform about the same as Kakashi did during his respective fight with Hidan. He may not have the added visual perception of the Sharingan that Kakashi had, but he'd also only have one opponent to worry about, unlike how Kakashi did in that fight. If Kakuzu decides to throw his hearts at Kabuto to help Hidan, however, then Orochimaru can just summon Hashirama and Tobirama to help Kabuto. But if Kakuzu doesn't throw his hearts at Kabuto and decides to use them on Orochimaru instead, then I feel like Kabuto himself realistically should be able to take care of Hidan. I can see an argument for Hidan though, since Kabuto said he wasn't the best at taijutsu. But that said, he did seem pretty decent with throwing hands with Tsunade, so I feel like it kind of evens out. I mean, worst case, Hashirama and Tobirama take care of him, then it would just be, all 4 of them fighting Kakuzu. And to be honest, as strong as I believe Kakuzu is, I can't see him surviving this one. Orochimaru alone can use all 5 nature transformations to possibly counter any jutsu that Kakuzu puts out. Worst case scenario, Hashirama and Tobirama could help in this regard. Kabuto could either try to help by getting rid of the hearts by, either chakra scalpel or stay back to provide medical support. I mean, if it came down to it and Kakuzu went into his weird monster transformation, then Kabuto can at least summon 1 basic giant snake and Orochimaru can summon Manda to help. And like I said earlier, I just can't see Kakuzu surviving this one. So as much as I really like Kabuto, I mean, he's my favorite Akatsuki member, I can't see the Immortal Duo winning this one. Now I'm gonna move on to Pain and Konan. Like with Hidan, Konan does get a lot of crap, especially with a lot of cases in the verse battle videos. She gets the restriction of not having any prep time in order to use her 600 billion paper bomb trap. To be honest though, even without it, she's no joke. And I honestly think with her calm composure, her ability to fly, and her paper abilities, she'd actually be able to take care of this Kabuto. Even though he was underestimating her, Konan was doing a pretty decent job against Obito during their brief little scuffle. And if she pulls any of the similar moves like she did in that fight, she may be able to do some serious damage to Kabuto to the point where even he came to heal himself from. But as I've said before, if Orochimaru can use Edo Tensei in time, Tobirama and Hashirama could help Kabuto. The problem with that is that Pain could have the weaker paths help Konan as well. And with her having the numbers a bit in her favor and also the added abilities of those paths such as Jutsu Absorption, Soul Stealing, and Summoning the King of Hell to heal any of the paths that are damaged, they could possibly overwhelm Kabuto and the Edo Tensei. It'll be even worse if they don't have any intel on how the Rinnegan's abilities work. It's safe to assume that Orochimaru would know some stuff about it, but I feel like it's also likely with how discreet Pain is known to be, specifically on the Rinnegan's abilities, that Orochimaru wouldn't know everything. Then, of course, that would leave Orochimaru to deal with the other 3 paths of Pain, and while I do think Orochimaru could perform better than Jiraiya would have against these specific paths, which are the Diva path, Asura path, and the Animal path, I can't realistically see Orochimaru coming out on top on this one. Yes, he has Manda and a couple of the other snakes, but Pain can also summon animals and probably just as much, if not more, if he needs to. And while I do think Orochimaru could put up a good fight, he doesn't have anything in his arsenal as quick or divisive as Flying Raijin or Kamui to deal with these paths, especially if the Diva path uses the Almighty Push or Planetary Devastation, though realistically he can't use those without putting Konan at risk, so there's that. But to be frank, I don't see Orochimaru winning this either way, especially if Konan can deal with Kabuto and the Edo Tensei in enough time to help. It'd be even worse. So I think Pain and Konan take this about mid-diff. Even if, by the grace of God, they were able to beat all the 6 paths of Pain and Konan, Nagato would still be alive, so technically Nagato would still win. Last, we have Deidera and Tobi, and I wasn't gonna do this one originally because, I mean, come on, it's Obito. I'm pretty sure Obito could honestly deal with just Orochimaru and Kabuto on his own. Worst case scenario, Obito would toys around and not takes the fight seriously until Orochimaru and Kabuto somehow take out Deidera so that Obito doesn't blow his cover, and then just decides to end the fight and suck him up with Kamui. Like I said, I wasn't going to do this one originally, but I feel like I get a lot of flack if I didn't do this one, especially since I did it in the Kakashi and Guy versus the Akatsuki duo. So I was like, you know what, I might as well do it. I realize that a lot of people may think it's unfair for me to use the Edo Tensei argument for Orochimaru, but I do see a lot of people, when they cover Orochimaru, give him the Edo Tensei, so I feel like it's not really that much discrepancy for it. Especially with a lot of these, he would definitely need the Edo Tensei, at least, Tobirama and Hashirama in the Hiruzen fight. Again, like I said at the beginning of the video, I really hate covering Orochimaru in versus battle videos just because he's weird to scale. He's weird to do in versus battle videos because like I said, he's not inconsistent, but somehow he's just weird for me to scale. I don't know. Let me know if anybody else thinks the same way. But in any case, there y'all have it. Orochimaru and Kabuto wins at least 2 teams of the Akatsuki. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Let me know if I missed anything or if you think I'm wrong. Let me know which team you think the Sound team definitely beats. 100%. I'd love to know y'all's opinion. Thank y'all for watching all the way to the end if you have. And until my next one, LightningSnow, out.